So here we are, engulfed in light. Let's see what our new friend has to say. So we're here, we're back. We are still here, lingering. To be very honest, I am very much considering not speaking anything in this stage because it really speaks for itself. And this stage is magnificent and it only works because of the structure of the game. It's like if this was the first stage of the game, it would not be as interesting. The only reason why it works is because this is what we get for our pain. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the value of the interactive story. Flower really ushered in a discussion about what is and is not a game. I am sure that discussion was already in place before Flower came out, but at least as far as I remember, it was one of the first games to really push that discussion into the forefront of people's minds when they were thinking about video games. And I find that discussion really kind of silly because it reminds me a lot of a tangential discussion that exists a lot in music. And you can often hear people, generally parents, that would say, or not really generally parents, I guess I'm being unfair, but you can often hear people say like this style of music, like this X thing is not music. So they will say, for instance, metal is not music, or hip hop is not music, or actually this is pretty funny. It always goes kind of like this. It's like metal fans will say that hip hop is not music, hip hop fans will say that country is not music, and country fans will say that metal is not music, and the cycle just goes around. This is incredibly stupid because they are obviously all music. Like it doesn't take particularly a vested interest in any one of the specific styles to understand that they are all music. They all work on the same basic principle of harmony, rhythm, and melody. And I have this weird way to see music that is basically music is noise over time. So anything that is noise over time is music in some manner. And you could, if you're being very precious about it, add the word pattern in there. Music is pattern noise over time, because a lot of people really require pattern in order to really form a musical concept, such as motifs and things like that. However, I feel like the lack of a pattern does not unmake music. It just makes music better. And this is also a thing that I believe a lot of people struggle with from the conversations I've had with people, which is you can have bad art. Like art doesn't, if you call something art, you're not automatically saying that it's good. And I think people have a bit of a problem understanding this. It's just like, no, this can't be art because it's bad. No, you can have bad art for sure. And I could name a bunch of them, but in the interest of not making this thing a million years long, the real discussion that I think is interesting to have is the value of art for certain segments, like for certain people. Like why do more people relate to this thing over that other thing? And that's the interesting discussion to have, the interesting way to look at it from my perspective. And if applied to video games, I think this becomes really interesting because the types of people who would enjoy different types of games are as diverse as the types of games there are and the types of music there are. So some people may look at Flower and see a total waste of time, and some people may look at Call of Duty and see a total waste of time. Neither of those is an absolute truth. They're just you can't just say that. You can't just say that all of modern shooters are bad and all of interactive art is bad, because they have different targets. Like the Flower is not any less of a game. It's not any less valid of being called a game than Call of Duty is valid of being called a shooter. So I don't know, it's really weird to me that people got so perpetually stuck in this conversation of this is not a game, because it clearly is. It's like there are things which you could debate as maybe this is not a game, but I don't know, I struggle to think about them much in the same way that if it wasn't for one single example, I would struggle to think about something that people rightfully debate as being or not being music. If you want to have a discussion about whether 433 is music or not, that is an interesting discussion, because music, as I see it, is noise over time. And 433 is literally the absence of intended noise. So is it music? I don't actually consider it to be. I think it's a supremely interesting piece of high concept art. However, music it is not. And that is a discussion that I'm willing to have with anybody. With anybody. And I'm sure there must be some game out there that works in a similar way, that it really challenges what we think a game should be. But Flower is not that at all, because it still works on a narrative structure. It still demands input from the player. It still has this interactive aspect to it that it really is the cornerstone of gaming. And it feels really, really backwards to me that people got so incredibly stuck on this conversation of this is not a game. I don't know, it feels awkward. And something that is kind of tangential to that is that a discussion that I hear quite often, which is this is not a game because it is not challenging. And I don't know, man, like that's that is a really, really stupid slippery slope to go down upon, because first, challenge is subjective. Some things are really hard for some people. Some other things are really easy for some other people. So it's just like, I'm a pianist, right? And for me, I don't feel any sort of input satisfaction from video games. I don't play video games to be challenged. At least not physically. Because if I wanted to do a thing that was just physically hard with my hands, I would go play Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata Movement 3. Because that's really fucking hard. And playing that is incredibly satisfying to me on a mechanical level. However, video games don't work for me in that sense. Because, I don't know, they are not interesting enough for the sort of dexterity that I have built for myself. And I find it interesting that I have this perspective because of music, because it really shifts the entire way that I look at games in general. Because I am never approaching any game with the expectation of it being hard or being mechanically interesting. A lot of games are. So I love Ninja Gaiden, and I love Devil May Cry. And all of those games to me are super satisfying. It's not like I have piano superpowers. Like I can't play a lot of games and enjoy them mechanically, physically. it's just not the way in which I will generally interact with a game, at least not a priori. So a game kind of has to earn the, I'm gonna call it like quote unquote respect, to be seen by me as a mechanical achievement, because for most purposes it's just not. And I find really interesting that a lot of people get really stuck on this thing that no, games have to be challenging, because I've never felt that way. I don't feel like games in general provide like interesting challenges, mechanically speaking. And it's funny to think about that, because I play a lot of games, and I've played a lot of games over the course of my life that were hard, and I've wanted to do hard challenges. I remember when I was a teenager, I played the first Devil May Cry. I used to do challenge runs in that game. I had like triple S's in all of the missions on the hardest difficulty settings. I took a lot of pride in that. It was really weird. I mean, it wasn't weird, but it's just, I don't know, looking back at it, I felt like I was over invested in that game when I could have been invested into something else. And I think this idea of game difficulty mainly comes from this value perception of being really invested in a game. And I super respect that. I think it's interesting that people give themselves in this way to games. However, I'm not sure it is super, I'm gonna call it quote unquote healthy. I don't know if I would call it the best investment you can make in getting this invested into the notion of a challenge, because you end up missing on a whole other side of things, because games and gaming is not limited to the challenging aspects of it, because you can have something that is like Flower, which is an interactive narrative of a greater scope. Or you can have even like, I don't know, most JRPGs, which are games in which challenge is not most of a concern at all, even because you can completely negate the challenge by simply grinding. So if you have a game like a JRPG, where you have this option of spending more time to nullify the challenge of the game, you are suddenly forced, quote unquote, to pay a lot more attention to the other sides of the game. And that's 100% completely positive, in my opinion, because you are taking into your hands which parts of the game you want to actually engage with. And when you say that games have to be challenging, you are taking away the right that people have to engage with the non-challenging part of the game, in my opinion. So when people say that like something like Dark Souls should not have an easy mode, like, no, you were wrong about that. It should, and games should have cheats. All games should have cheats. Absolutely all games should have cheats, because some people are just not interested in the challenge part of the game. And to say that because they are not interested in this aspect, that they don't have the right to experience this other aspect of it, is incredibly short-sighted. And so it's just like, I believe people call this gatekeeping. I have a massive problem with the whole get good kind of stuff. And because it's just, first, I think it's misplaced value. But second, there's this thing, like, you are protecting this thing, like your hobby, this precious little game you have. And you don't want people to interact with it if it's not on your terms. But you don't have that sort of right. You don't have that sort of pull on other people's decisions on how to enjoy their existence. And it's really silly to think that you do. And I would even apply this into a greater sense to game design in general. because I am of the particular opinion that I love knowing about game design. I like to get a game and really try to dissect it from a game design perspective, try to understand why the pieces work the way they do. But I am also of the very concrete and established, solidified opinion that there is no game design that is more valuable than my time and my opinion and my enjoyment of it. So if a game's design is not working in favor of my enjoyment of the game, I'm not gonna call it a bad design, but because it is subjective, it's just my enjoyment of it. However, I also don't feel super inclined to respect it, especially when the root of the disconnect is based upon a sense of lost time. So if I feel like a game is just wasting my time, unless the rest of the game is incredibly good, and I can give some example of this, like Drakengard is a good example, Nier is an example. Some of these games, they really have these time-wasting mechanics, and I could indeed criticize them forever for it, but I think they make up their bad designs in other places. And you also have games like, I don't know, Diablo 3, which is a game I really like and I play it frequently. But it is a completely dumb, mind-numbing game. It has, I'm not gonna say it has no value, but it is such a hard game to defend from a design perspective because it has so many things that are built from the ground up to simply waste your time and nothing else. It is a completely unrewarding game. When I think about what are the reasons why I play Diablo 3, I would very safely say that most of it is simply because I use that game a lot to just be able to listen to audiobooks or indulge in nostalgia soundtrack, because otherwise that game would be almost immediately lost to me. And this is clearly, as much as I enjoy the game, the fact that I need to inject so much outside value into it to be able to simply endure it is a very clear sign of a game that has some sort of basic design flaw. Because the game by itself is not interesting. I need to inject something else into it. Otherwise, the value just goes out of the window. And this is something to consider, I guess. Something else that I think is really funny to consider is like, think about this for a second. If games could somehow just stop being challenging at all, if I don't know how that would be possible. I can't envision this. I am talking about a thing that is purely hypothetical. But try to think here with me. Try to imagine, what if games were impossible to be challenging? What if you could never die? What if making progress was simply a matter of pressing forward? Would you still interact with games? If no, that's fair enough. But if yes, try to consider how different would your enjoyment of them be? Would you require more visuals? Would you require more story? Because, for instance, Flower is a game in which it's really easy to progress. It's not brain dead, you need to do things, but it is really easy to make forward progress. And it has, let's say it has X amount of effort put into visuals and Y amount into story. If you don't enjoy Flower, would you enjoy it if it was more pretty or if it was more story heavy? Do you think if the flowers spoke, that would enhance the experience for you? And why would that be the case? So I think there is still a lot of fertile ground for gaming in the sense of the interactive narrative, and what people consider difficulty in games to be, and how do we parse these mechanics and how we can think about them in ways that are interesting and new and have some sort of value to ourselves as consumers of this art medium, and for the developers and for everybody involved in this process. I don't know, I think that's something interesting to ponder. Like, if games just stopped being challenging, would they still matter? Would you still be willing to engage with them? Do games actually necessitate challenge to be engaging? Personally, I don't think so. I think about that question, and it really comes off to me as no, not really. What they need to be engaging is to actually emotionally engage more than physically engage. But yeah, this has been Flower. I hope you really enjoyed it. It was a really good time doing this game. I love it. This really is a game that I think everybody should play. And yeah, let's take a look at the credits, shall we? Thank you for playing, and thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. It was super pleasant to play. I love this game. As I've tried to make explicit through this series, this game was a revelation to me when I first played it. It opened up so many avenues of expression, and it just opened up my mind to what games could be, should be, and might one day become. Because I am still hopeful for more games like this. They are made with an intent to show a message. Because, especially nowadays, 2021, we have so many games simply focused on occupying our time. When I look at things like the biggest games, right? Like Destiny, Fortnite. Not to say that Diablo 3 is a big game, but that game as well. And that's what I mean. Some of these games I enjoy. I don't think they are bad games. When I'm calling out, for instance, I have Destiny on my mind because I read an article about it a couple hours ago. But I'm not calling out these games for being bad games. I don't think they are objectively bad. And if you enjoy Destiny or whatever it is, I don't think you're like a bad person for it. Like, it's just your taste. You enjoy a thing, like whatever. Enjoy your thing. I don't care. It's just in these games, this trend of games like Destiny and like Diablo, they are completely mindless. They are products, and there is nothing wrong with being a product the way that game development exists in this current era. All games are products, mostly, like 99%. It is actually really difficult to find a game that I would not classify as a product, because games are made with the intent of sale. So most development studios want to make money off of their games, so they sell it. And to me, that's all that really takes to constitute a product. However, a product, it's not mutually exclusive with being art. That's why we have art galleries. That and money laundering, but that's another issue. But it's like, I think, I'm very, very sure that you can have a product that is also art. However, you can, absolutely, and I would dare anybody to disagree with this, you can have products that are not art. They are simply done in a functional way. And that's what I believe most gaming has become. It has become a functional means of development studios to make money for companies. And that is a depressing thought for me, because I really, really think that games have a lot of potential as art. Not only art in this way of like artsy interactive stories, but when I think of games like Silent Hill or the Persona series, or let me see if I can think of another one. Off the top of my head. Nier. God damn it. Yeah, Nier is definitely art. So you have these, they are products, undoubtedly, but they are made with artistic vision that goes beyond simply, I want to sell this thing to as many people as possible. And I think that has been sorely missed in gaming nowadays, and it really bums me out, because this is where I think the real value of games is when you find something that you can interact with at an emotional level, at an intellectual level, something that you can play and you can experience, and something that you will remember, something that affects you deeply. And games can do that. That is something that a piece of interactive art can do, because the experience of playing the game will always be yours. It will be your expression of that point in time. It will be your life at that second. And yeah, it's just like, there is a lot of value in that. There is a lot of value in you being able to see and interact and experience these pieces of art in this interactive medium. One of the reasons why I really like playing this game and why I replay it every once and again, it's basically for the same reason why I replay Drakengard, or why I replay Nier, or why I replay Silent Hill 2. Because those are the games that really make me hopeful of what games can continue to be, because I think they already are. Emotional journeys and thought-provoking pieces of media. I just hope, sadly, I am forced to include companies on this. I hope that we can collectively see the value of games as art and something that is done to instill an emotion that is more than simply wanting to sell a product. I really miss when you could play a game and really feel the way in which it was designed. You could feel the message of it. It was obvious. There are still games like that, but they are becoming more and more few and far between. But yeah, and this is why I play this, and this is why I would love if you also played it, because it's really easy to get tangled into what gaming has become in the past decade, of this numbing experience, these mindless products that want nothing more than to take your money and to take your time and to occupy space in your existence, and forget that it can be more than that. It can be more interesting than that, and it should. By all rights, it should. Yeah. Once again, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in the next one, whatever it is. And until then, take care of yourself, have a great day, and all the best, always. Bye-bye.